So today we are going to cover all of the 8 new weapon classes in Elden Ring, going to go over their movesets, what Ash of War options that can be equipped onto them, all the different scalings they get with every single infusion, and I will also show the locations marked on a map, but don't worry, I will give a spoiler warning before actually opening the map. Now I'm just going to go over the first weapon that can be acquired for every single class, so I'm not going to go over every single one of the light greatswords or all the great katanas, just going to go over the basic one. I'm still in the middle of my playthrough. So after I finish my playthrough, I'll make another video just breaking down all the weapons that I did find and giving my overall thoughts and opinions on them. But this one is just going to be like a little brief overview on how all of these actually do work. Anyway, let's just get into it. So the first light greatsword you can acquire in the DLC is called Milady. Also, don't worry, this is not a spoiler location. This is literally the base game. Even the armor set I'm wearing is just straight from the base game as well. Now to get into the moveset, the one-handed light attack, a mix-up of poking attacks and swiping attacks. The one-hand or two-handed light attack, also basically the exact same thing, but actually does end in a poking attack instead. The two-handed heavy attack, going to be a nice double swipe, and it's the two-handed heavy attack follow-up, also a double swipe. Same thing one-handed as well, basically a bunch of these double swiping attacks, and the two-handed charged heavy attack is going to be the exact same thing, just slower. Now the best thing about these heavy attacks is that they combo in flawlessly to the light attack. So use the double heavy attack swipe, and that's the light attack right there. Heavy attack, light attack, and you can continue the combo, and it just works so nicely. And that's one-handed and two-handed. It is just amazing. As for the running attack, here's the running light, and here's the running heavy two-handed. And don't worry, you can combo that into the light attack as well. As you see, buttery smooth, one-handed running attack, light, and heavy. Jumping, light attack, one-handed, jumping, heavy attack, two-handed. Basically, all of these heavy attacks just get double swipes. Jumping heavy attack, jumping light attack, one-handed. I don't even know how to speak. That's the heavy. Backstepping attack, two-handed. Backstepping attack, one-handed. And the crouching attack, one-handed. Crouching attack, two-handed. Basically the exact same thing. And the rolling attack is like identical to crouching attacks, if you guys did not know. Also forgot to mention the power sensing combos. So this went back and just go ahead. Got some gameplay, but this is the power sensing combo of the light greatswords. And don't worry, the heavy attacks do combo in to the power sensing light attacks too. This is the jumping power sensing combo, and this is the running power sensing combo. Now to get into the Ash of War options that these all have, do keep in mind, I did pick up some Ashes of War in the DLC, so you will be seeing some of those. But these are basically all the options of which you can equip onto the light greatswords. Bunch of really good stuff, basically everything for poking attacks, even like all smaller types of weapons. Pretty sure it shares the exact same things as straight swords. Now, as for all the scalings they get, it is going to be somewhat of a quality-based weapon. It might scale a bit best or better with dexterity, but going either strength or dexterity is going to be perfectly fine. It does get a B scaling in magic, which is pretty nice as well, although all other types of elemental infusions don't really scale that well. One thing I forgot to showcase is the weapon skill, wing stance. This is the Ash of War that you can only equip onto light greatswords. That is the light attack combo. You actually do hold onto it as a stance, as you see. And that is the heavy attack, which is going to be a nice lunging poke. Does not consume much FP, only 8 and 10. Now, in terms of how or where to acquire these from, once again, there's going to be map spoilers. But you do get it pretty early on at Castle Ensis. Actually, I had them highlighted already. But you get the light greatsword in the first tower here. As soon as you like go across the bridge, you'll be like to the left in the first room. Top of the tower in a chest will be the light greatsword. Now, unfortunately, the weapon skill doesn't come default with it, and you have to pick up the Ash of War, which thankfully you do also get in Castle Ensis in this tower here, which is closer towards the boss. You have to go jump off the balcony, cross the bridge, and you will see a tower. Just climb up the tower, and you can pick up the Ash of War wing stance. The first great katana you can acquire in the DLC is called the Great Katana. As for its moveset, this is going to be the light attack combo, one-handed. Going to be a mix-up of these poking attacks and swiping attacks. The two-handed light attack combo, also going to be a mix-up of the poking attacks and swiping attacks. One-handed heavy, going to be a nice horizontal swipe, which is actually really good for variety, because mostly when you have your light attack combos, it's going to be a bunch of like just poking attacks and downward swipes. So having variety or having horizontal swipes is going to be amazing. Its running light attack is going to be a nice poke, both one-handed and two-handed. Running heavy attack, both one-handed and two-handed, is a nice horizontal swipe again. The jumping light attack, jumping heavy attack, both one-handed and two-handed, is practically identical. The poise damage of these things are very comparable to curved greatswords. Curved greatswords might swing a bit faster, but these actually do get bleed. And they probably get just as much poise damage as well, which is pretty nice. Crouching attack and rolling attack is going to be a poke both one-handed and two-handed. As for its Ash of War, it does come default with overhead stance, and when you do pick it up, it is going to be an Ash of War, so you can actually remove it. But that is going to be the light attack. It does put you in a stance, and the heavy attack is going to be nice Ichimonji downward slap that you get from Sekiro. They do not do good stance damage at all, but they do proc bleed very quickly, especially with that triple head slam. So if you think it is going to be like an unsheathed version with the great katanas, it does not. Unsheathed literally gets more stance damage. One thing I actually forgot to mention is the power sensing combos. This is going to be the power sensing combo. Honestly, I'm not a fan of the light attacks. They're actually very slow, swing one after the other. The running attack though is very good, as is the jumping attack. But I feel like the power sense combos, they're just done better with curved greatswords, but these do get bleed, so pretty cool. In terms of all the Ash of War options, these are all of them right here. You can slow down the video if I'm going too fast, but yeah, no, it does not come with Unsheath, or you cannot put Unsheath onto a Great Katana. So if you're looking to do that, unfortunately, that is not going to be the case. But you do get some very solid options overall. You get like a lot of things for poking attacks. You even get larger types of weapon options like Eruption. And you even get things for swiping attacks and even some types of smaller weapons. So you actually get really good stuff with the Great Katanas. Now, in terms of its infusions, it's going to scale probably best with Keen or Dexterity, but going either or in Strength or Dexterity is going to be nice. Gets a very good quality scaling too. In terms of all of its elemental infusions, you just get like C scalings across the board, so it's not going to be that good. But thankfully, you do get a B scaling in Arcane with an Occult infusion, and with passive bleed weapons, that is going to be amazing. Now, in terms of where to acquire the weapon, it actually is going to be very early on into the DLC. You literally don't have to kill anything to acquire it. It is going to be located right here in the middle of this little lake. There's going to be somewhat of a powerful enemy there. It's either this lake or that lake. I'm pretty sure it's this lake. But it's going to be right in the middle of that lake. So the first perfume bottle you can acquire is called the Fire Spark perfume bottle. Now, as for its moveset, the light attack combo, that's going to be two-handed. It actually is going to be a power sense when you do two-handed. One-handed light attack combo, going to be this. It looks like it has a decent amount of range, but actually it's deceptive range. It's kind of hard to tell exactly how far it does go. This is the one-handed heavy attack. This is the two-handed heavy attack. It does get a very solid charged heavy attack though. The poise damage isn't that crazy good. It's probably like comparable to things like daggers or straight swords sometimes. With a charged heavy attack power stance. Charged heavy attack poise damage. The running light attack, two-handed. Running heavy attack, two-handed. That one also does have very weird hit detection. It's kind of hard to aim that one. This is the running light attack and the running heavy attack one-handed. The jumping light attack, jumping heavy attack, and two-handed jumping light attack, and jumping heavy attack. In terms of the crouching attack, same thing one-handed as well. Crouching and rolling attack is basically the exact same thing. And then backstep, one-handed, backstep, two-handed. As for its Ash War, it does come default with kick. There are specific perfume Ash Wars you can get later into the playthrough, but yeah, unfortunately, it just comes with kick. Now, in terms of all of its Ash of War options, it is not going to get much. Like, basically all these ones. Endure is probably the most interesting one, I suppose. The fact that it can get Beast Roar, I guess, is pretty cool as well. But yeah, it gets like literally less Ash of War options than whips. This one you do get later into the playthrough. Not going to really showcase, or I can showcase exactly what it's like. I'm not going to tell you guys where to get it though. You can let me know in the comments if you want to know the location of, that's the heavy attack, excuse me. This is the weapon skill. I also forgot about the scalings, my bad. My bad. But yeah, it just gets standard infusion. Just gets a standard infusion. There will be other perfume bottles that get different elements, that get different types of scalings, and you can get some of them somewhat early on as well. In terms of how a way to acquire this one, is going to be very early on in the game, or into the DLC, located right here before the gates of Castle Ensis. It is just going to be surrounded by some perfumer enemies. It's going to be in a chest right there. The first hand-to-hand weapon you get in the DLC is called the Dry Leaf Arts. Now, the combo for this one-handed light attack, going to be a mix-up of these, I don't know, it's just hard to explain. There's a bunch of cool martial art-based stuff, and the two-handed light attack combos, very flashy and cool, hit so many times. They're going to pair very nicely with the multi-hit types of talismans. The heavy attack, this is actually charged heavy attacks. Does get a nice little AoE, and yes, the AoE does hit multiple enemies at once. That's going to be the uncharged one-handed heavy attacks, two-handed running attack, light, and two-handed heavy attack, one-handed running light, and one-handed running heavy. Solid fly kick right there. The jumping light attack, two-handed, jumping heavy attack, two-handed, and jumping light attack one-handed, and jumping heavy attack one-handed as well. As for its backstepping attack, very flashy and cool. That's one-handed. Crouching attack one-handed, which is the same as the rolling attack. And two-handed rolling attack and crouching attack. Does hit multiple times very quickly, so it's not going to be that much of an issue. Now, in terms of the base weapon skill that it actually does come with, it's called Palm Blast. This thing is broken. Like, this is an actual S tier weapon skill. It doesn't seem like it's much. That's the uncharged version. This thing has basically infinite hyper armor. Like, you never get staggered out of this thing, and it does colossal damage, even without the Godfrey's icon, and it does amazing poise damage. Like, this thing makes this weapon just amazing. Like, it is just flawless. There is no other way to say it. It's just that good. In terms of the Ash of War options you can put onto this, not that much. Obviously, being that it's like a fist-based weapon, there's not really many things you can equip onto it. But it does get a decent amount. Some of the cool, like, unique things you get with hand-to-hand combat arts are going to be your best options. But you still get somewhat decent things. In terms of its scalings, though, it's going to get an A scaling in strength with a heavy infusion, B scaling with a keen infusion, and decent quality scaling, and actually decent elemental scalings as well. Pretty much like B scalings across the board, which is very nice. Very, very decent scalings. Now, in terms of where to acquire it, also, don't worry, the weapon skill Palm Blast does come base onto this as an Ash of War, so you can actually remove it as soon as you pick the weapon up. But in terms of where to acquire it, it actually is going to be somewhat of a spoiler. You have to kill at least one Remembrance boss first. But the boss you do have to kill is going to be located here in Castle Ensis. Once you do kill the boss and you leave this section, there is going to be like a gesture and like a note telling you to like go to a certain location and fight an NPC, of which that NPC is going to be located here at this grace, and you use that gesture in front of the NPC, and you actually will end up fighting him. And once you fight him, you do acquire the Dry Leaf Arts. As for the Beast Claws, the first one you can get is called Beast Claw. As for the moveset, one-handed light attack, just a rabid beast. Like, it is really cool and flashy looking. The two-handed light attack combo, very similar. One thing I don't really care much for is that it does like a little lunge, so you do have to like kind of like space it correctly. It doesn't like just swing straight away. You have to like lunge first. The heavy attack though, one-handed. And two-handed heavy attack, that's uncharged. And then charged. Now, one thing to keep in mind is like I use these weapons plenty, and they were really fun, and they proc bleed extremely quickly because they do get passive bleed. But they're very hard to control. Like, you have to play locked on basically all the time, because they just flail around so much. But the thing is, with them flailing around this much, it's actually kind of hard for enemies to hit you too. So, kind of like a double-edged sword. As for the running attack though, that's running light, running heavy attack, running light, and running heavy attack. Jumping light, two-handed, jumping heavy attack, two-handed, jumping light, one-handed, and jumping lights, or jumping heavy, I don't know how to speak anymore. Anyway, backstepping attack, two-handed, backstepping attack, one-handed, crouching attack, rolling attack, one-handed, basically the exact same thing. That is very quick. Cool. And as for the weapon skill, it is called Savage Claws. If you do get stuck in this long animation, you cannot cancel it, but this thing procs bleed incredibly quickly, and it does stagger larger enemies as well. Like, this thing can just stun lock so many enemies. I probably put some gameplay on screen. Like, this thing, kind of crazy when you go up against those enemies that can get staggered. And for only 13 FP, it is not that bad. Now, as for the Ash of War options, you get some actually more stuff than you might think. Not too bad. Not too bad. Cragblade is going to be a pretty interesting pairing, but I just go stick with the cool claw-based stuff. It does actually come passive with that skill as an Ash of War itself, so you can actually remove it and put it onto other Beast Claws if you wanted to, as soon as you acquire the weapon. As for the scalings though, A scaling in strength with a heavy infusion, B scaling with dexterity. But you get pretty decent scalings across the board. Not too bad. Can't really complain. Does get a B scaling and arcane, so going into an occult infusion is going to be very solid because it is going to improve that blood loss build up a whole bunch. Now, in terms of acquiring it, this can be gotten very early on in the game, like extremely early on in the DLC. Basically, right here in the forest, there's going to be like a naked man wielding this weapon itself. You can just kill him and then go acquire the beast claws. Now, as for the thrusting shield, the first one you can acquire is called the dueling shield itself. As for the moveset, this is the one-handed light attack. Bunch of these like poking attacks, which is pretty cool. Yes, they do get like blocking frames with like the heavy attacks as well. This is going to the one-handed heavy attack. This is the follow-up. This is the two-handed heavy attack. And yeah, they actually can have a decent amount of stability when maxed out, and you can actually block a decent amount of damage. It is very solid. This is the running light attack. This is the running heavy attack. Running lights one-handed, running heavy. Jumping lights, jumping heavy. Same thing, two-handed. Backstepping attack. Backstepping attack. Crouch. Crouch. And its weapon skill is called Shield Strike, which doesn't actually consume any FP, and just gets a bunch of these quick attacks that can do some nice damage and stagger pretty well. Obviously not going to be any power stancing combos, because when you do have this thing on the left hand, it just blocks, so you can't really do a power stancing combo. As for its weapon skills, basically going to get everything for shields and then some. Like, you get cool poking attack skills like impaling thrust and repeating thrust, which is actually insane. You even get stuff like giant hunt and charge forth. Like, you get a lot of things. I was not expecting to actually be able to equip all of these types of skills with a thrusting shield, but yeah, you can do that. So that's actually pretty cool. So if you guys were interested in the thrusting shields, they're definitely going to be better than what you were thinking they were going to be. And yes, they can get critical attacks as well. If you did not know, you can critical attack enemies. As for your scalings, B in both strength and dexterity, and you get pretty decent elemental scalings too, so can't really go wrong either way. In terms of its location though, it is going to be somewhat later into the DLC, so there's going to be a little bit of spoilers. You'd have to kill at least one of the Remembrance bosses, but it is going to be located here in the Shadow Keep Legacy Dungeon. At the storehouse, first floor, you got to go up at least one floor, scour like the right side of the building, and you can like jump over like a little balcony, and it should be there on the floor, and you can just pick it up. As for the Backhand Blade, the first one is going to be called Backhand Blade, and the light attack combos are very similar to things like Curve Sword, a bunch of swiping attacks, but when you two-handed, it does a power sensing combo, swings one after the other, so it might not be as good as like regular Curve Swords, but these things actually do lunge further. And the benefit of actually just power sensing by just two-handing means that one, you don't have to upgrade a second weapon, and two, you get access to things like power sensing heavy attacks. And this thing with charged heavies, it lunges very far, and that is a very solid charged heavy attack right there. Pretty solid. That means you also do get access to things like jumping light attacks and jumping heavy attacks too. One-handed jumping light and one-handed jumping heavy. Two-handed running light, two-handed running heavy, one-handed running light, and one-handed running heavy. Very fluid, very smooth. Two-handed crouching attack, one-handed crouching attack. It's going to be the exact same for the roll. Backstepping attack, one-handed backstepping attack. Two-handed. Now, as for the Ash War, it is called Blind Spot. It is very cheap. Does an okay amount of stance damage, and yes, it does get iframes, and those iframes are basically instant. Like, this is very easy to dodge, and or you actually can dodge very easily by using this skill. The damage is going to be like amazing, and it is going to be somewhat harder to control, but you do get instant iframes. Now, as for the Ash of War options, it doesn't really get that many stuff. I don't know why. Curve Swords get like a lot more things. Like, thankfully it still gets stuff like Spinning Slash and Sword Dance, but you don't get stuff like Double Slash. You don't get things like Carrion Grand War or Flaming Strike. Like, you don't really get many things. You do get Flaming Strike, excuse me. But yeah, you don't even get Sacred Blade, excuse me. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah, you don't get Sacred Blade. I don't know why there's so many things you just don't get with backhanded blades that you normally get with Curve Swords. But in terms of the infusions though, A scaling in strength, S scaling in dexterity. There you go. Good quality scaling. And then just B scalings across the board with almost every infusion, which is actually pretty rare. This thing gets very, very good scalings. Even a double B with a cold infusion, which is also very rare, and an A scaling and arcane with an occult infusion. Now, in terms of acquiring this weapon, you can get it very early on. And yes, it does come with Blind Spot as an Ash Ward that you can remove and put onto other weapons or other backhanded blades, because it just is going to be for the backhanded blade. And you get it right here is going to be like a little structure that you can pick it up off, be sitting right in the middle. The first throwing blade you can get is called the Smith Script Dagger. Now, in terms of its light attack combos, it is going to be just a bunch of projectiles. And yes, they do not consume any FP. Yes, they do have damage fall off. And yes, they do terrible damage. Like, I mean, awful damage. And like, as you can see, their base damage at max level 151. And it is just like, feels worse than that. This is their heavy attack, by the way, one-handed. Also, they're just incredibly like obnoxious to like trying to hit an enemy. That's especially like a skinny one that can move around, because they do input read it and it will dodge it every single time. Even if they don't even try to dodge it, it will still just miss. This is the running attack, running lights. There's the running heavy attack, one-handed running lights, one-handed running heavy, jumping light attack, jumping heavy attack. Yeah, these things need to get buffed. Like, this is a call to action right now. Buff these things, buff their range maybe, give it like more damage. Like, I know it's like free projectile attacks, so it might get broken if you just boost it a bit, but I don't know. Like, even with all the buffs in the world, like, there is new talismans that can boost these weapons specifically. This do piercing damage, so paired alongside the spear talisman. This thing gets an S scaling in dexterity, went all the way to 80 dexterity, paired alongside the multi-hit talismans. Yeah, they're just not that good. They're just awful. There's no other way to say it. This is the weapon skill, by the way, piercing throw. Not that bad damage for only 8 FP. You also can't even buff these things too. You can infuse them, but you cannot buff them, which is very upsetting. But in terms of the Ash of War options, it does get a decent amount of Ash of War options. Like, it actually is pretty good. You get a lot of things. Now, like, keep in mind that it is going to be dagger range. So, like, you're going to be using things like spitting slash and, you know, impaling thrust, and it's only going to have the range of like a dagger, essentially. Hopefully we get some more cool throwable blades in the DLC. But you do get a lot of really cool and interesting stuff. In terms of its scalings, though, you do get parry as well. In terms of its scalings, A scaling and strength, S scaling and dexterity, and it gets good scalings, but the base damage is just that bad that it doesn't even matter. It does get a random like intelligence and faith scaling, A scaling in both. I don't know what the purpose is of that, but it does get one of those. But you get decent scalings across the board. It's just unfortunate that the base damage is just horrendous, and you can't even buff these things. But yeah, if you do put it with like a bleed infusion, it is going to proc bleed at a distance, but the damage is not good. Now, in terms of acquiring the weapon, is somewhat early on in a dungeon. Are going to be acquired right about, which dungeon am I at? This is the dungeon. The Ruined Forge Lava Intake actually is going to be somewhat into the dungeon. It's not for a particular enemy. It'll just be sitting on a corpse, but it will be in an obvious location. Anyway, that is the video now done and completed. It was just meant to be a showcasing video. Obviously, I didn't really share too much of my opinions. I will actually have much more opinionated videos coming out along the way in terms of like tier lists and rankings, so definitely do subscribe for that. And also do follow me on Twitch, because I am still in the middle of my playthrough. I've killed about half the bosses. We might finish it off tomorrow, so definitely check me out there. Anyway, catch you guys around. Bye.